have a link in the description for 10% off if you want to get this for yourself. Welcome back, YouTube. One more video. 2-inch leveling kit on this 2016 F150. Get the truck lifted in the air and remove your wheels. Here's the kit you get. These are the 2 front spacers and the 2 rear spacer blocks. And then you have the hardware to hold everything together. Let's loosen these 4 bolts on both sides. I'm not going to remove any of them, I'm just going to loosen them right now. You're going to use an 18mm deep socket, and you're going to remove the bottom shock mount. Now that you have the shock out, support one side of your axle, and we can remove now these 4 bolts on the bottom. This is the block that we're going to be replacing. As you can see, it has 2 holes on the top and 2 pegs on the bottom. This plate here has 2 holes on the bottom, and the leaf spring has 2 pegs on the bottom. So you can't put it upside down, the new one. This is the difference between the stock and the lift leveling kit. What we're going to do is lower our support on the axle until we can get this in. So these holes are a tad bit too small for this F150. On here it looks like maybe 1/16 of an inch difference. So this sort of smooths, and it sort of bubbles on the side. It's not a perfectly flat pin. So I'm going to grab a bit and Dremel this out a little bit. So even though this is a bolting kit, you may have to use a die grinder with a rotary bit and open these holes up a little bit in order to make it fit. Now that I started putting this back together, I have, this is barely holding it up. We have the new U-bolts put in. I use the old nuts with their washers because the old nuts have better surface area contact to here. I put the shock bolt back in loosely, and I did this on both sides. So that way I am not worried about this really holding up the rear end anymore. And then now we'll start raising this up till slowly make sure all the wear marks line up. As we go up slowly, I'm going to be tightening the nuts on both sides slowly. All 4 on both sides. With the deep well socket I'm using, there's too much thread to even tighten these all the way. So I'm going to cut everything but a 1/2 inch from where it's at right now with the angle grinder. This is what it's going to look like when it's all tightened down. You're going to have the 4 nuts there, your shock here, and you're going to have that on both sides. Now that you have both sides tightened down, the back is done. So toss the tires back on and then move on to the front. Grab an 18mm short socket, long deep socket, or wrench, and you're going to break loose the 3 strut mount bolts. Use an 18mm to loosen the upper ball joint nut. Take it all the way down and then give it up a few threads, so when we knock this loose, it'll just drop and hit this. It's not going to fly. Use an 18mm ratcheting wrench if possible, and you grab the top with either a small box wrench or a pair of vice grips or an adjustable wrench and disconnect the sway bar. Use a large hammer, knock the control arm, and this will pop loose. Use a 21mm socket, remove the nut that holds on the tie rod end. Use an 18mm tool and remove both nuts that hold the bottom of the shock. Use the pry bar on the bottom to pull it out past the studs. Then use the provided nuts. Put this on, it can only go on one way. Tighten down the nuts. Now we're going to pound out the threads on the bottom here. We're going to pound these out. You're going to put the socket on and pound out the stud. The stud's pretty much pressed in to the shock. A good pointer for this kit, as you're feeding the top of the shock back in prior to putting the bottom of the shock in the cup, go ahead and you're going to have one person hold the shock so it doesn't fly around, and then you're going to start each one of these bolts, maybe 3, 4, 5 threads in, and then pop the bottom in, and then hand tighten these 3 bolts on top. So you have to do the same method with the pry bar to put the shock back in, and it's even harder obviously because now we have 2 more inches in the front. All these lines were getting super tight while I was trying to do that because I can only push it down so far. Just make sure you tighten it all back up, put it all back together, and then have fun doing this on the other side again after we tighten up these top Allen head bolts up top. Stock ride height is 40 inches from the ground to the top of the wheel well. At the end, the rear is 41.5, and let's see what the front looks like. Front is at 40 inches. After the installation, it seems like we can add a solid 2 inches worth of tire. So going up 2 inches on tire size will also give us another 1 inch of lift, and it will fill in the wheel well very nicely. There's the back side with the stock size tires. So after driving to and from work and going around town, I've noticed no difference in handling or ride quality or anything, so I'm very happy about that. Just using a tape measure, I figure I'm going to run an extra 2 inches on tire diameter, and overall I'm very satisfied. And I hope this video helped you guys. If you're experienced, go ahead and do it. If you're new to working on vehicles, I don't suggest you try this at home. And till next time, wrench on.